This is the Xbox method of factoring for quadratic equations. The first step you want to do is draw an x. In the first section, or in the top section of your x, will be your a multiplied by your c term. So in this case, it's 1 multiplied by negative 15, so we get negative 15. In the bottom section of your x will be your b term. So in this case, it's just 2. To fill out the rest of the x, we're going to find two numbers that will multiply to be negative 15, but also add to be 2. You can first start by listing all the multiples of negative 15. So in this case, it would be negative plus or minus 1, plus or minus 15, plus or minus 3, and plus or minus 5. Okay? So it's easy to see in this case that we're going to be using these two. And in order to get a negative 15, one of the numbers has to be negative. So I'm going to use negative 3 and positive 5 because that will add to be positive 2. Okay. Your next step will be to draw a box and cut it into 4 different sections. In your first section, you're going to put your first term of your original equation, so x squared. In the last box, you're going to put your last term of the original equation. In these two other boxes, we're going to use the two numbers that we found using our x, so negative 3 and 5. You want to make sure that you put one of the variable in each of those boxes as well. Next, we're going to factor out the greatest common factor from each row and from each column. So in this column, they both have a negative 3 in common. In this column, they both have an x in common. In this row, they just have an x, and in this row, they have a 5. At this point, you can actually check yourself. So you can see that x multiplied by x will get you x squared. X multiplied by negative 3 will get you negative 3x. Negative 3 times 5 is negative 15, and x times 5 is 5x. From here, the ones on the side that you pulled out and the ones on the top that you pulled out is actually your factored form of the original equation. So if we were to rewrite it to look more like this, you can see that this is the factored form of that quadratic equation. Now if you wanted to go on and it asks you to solve for x, you can do that as well and break this up into x plus 5 equals 0 and x minus 3 equals 0. Solve by x by subtracting 5 from both sides, and you get x equals negative 5. And add 3 to both sides to get positive 3. Okay. Now another example to use this same method is when your a term is not 1, but it's actually 12. So we do the same steps in drawing an x. In the first section of your x will be the a term multiplied by the c term. So 12 times 3 is 36. Your bottom section is your b term, so negative 13. And you want to find two numbers that will multiply to be 36, but also add to be negative 13. If you list off the multiples of 36, you get plus or minus 1 and plus or minus 36, plus or minus 2 and plus or minus 18, plus or minus 3 and plus or minus 12, plus or minus 4 and plus or minus 9. In this case, we need two negative numbers because they multiply to be a positive number and they add to be a negative number. And the difference between them needs to be negative 13. So we need to use negative 4 and negative 9. Okay. Your next step, like before, is to draw the box and cut it into 4 different sections. In your first section will be the first number of your original problem, and the last box is your last. You fill in the rest of the box using the numbers that we found using the x, plus one of your variable. From each row and from each column, we're going to pull out the greatest common factor. So in this case, they don't have anything in common, so I'm just going to pull out a 1. In this case, they have a 3. And in 12x squared and negative 4x, they both have a 4x. In 12x squared and negative 9x, they both have a 3x. Okay. At this point, don't forget to check yourself. So 4x squared multiplied by 3x equals 12x squared. 3x times 3 should equal positive 9x, not negative 9x. So what do? We pull out a negative as well. Okay. We also want to pull out a negative from here. That way that negative 1 multiplied by negative 3 will get you a positive 3. And negative 1 times positive 4x will get you negative 4x. Yeah. At this point, the side and the top numbers will be your factored form. So 3x minus 1 multiplied by 4x minus 3 equals 0. That is the factored form of the quadratic equation. If you want to solve for x, you can do that. 4x minus 3 equals 0. Solve for x by adding 1 to both sides. 3x equals 1. Divide by 3. Gets you x equals 1/3. You can add 3 to both sides to get 4x equals 3. Divide by 4. X equals 3/4.